Hey guys, tonight we slip into the mists of a forgotten war, one that may or may not have ended, and one you may or may not have started. You're lying flat on your back in a soaked marsh, eyes fluttering open to the gentle sounds of distant gulls, and the less gentle sensation of blood drying on your fingertips. Your head aches like it's been headbutted by Thor himself, and your right hand's clutching something heavy. You lift it. Yep, that's an axe, and it's not clean. You sit up slowly. The air is thick with fog and the cold is wet enough to feel personal, like it's being smug about it. Your boots are half buried in peat moss and your tunic's torn. At the shoulder, there's a smear of something across your cheek, you don't want to guess what. And your name? Yeah, you can't seem to remember that. You probably won't survive this. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop your location and what time it is for you in the comments. I love seeing where and when you're listening from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You rise from the soggy ground, like a man resurrected. The moon overhead is 3/4 full, glowing like a pale god's eye around you. Nothing but reeds, mist, and silence. And a trail, a faint one, boot prints, maybe yours, maybe not. You follow them. Within a few minutes of squelching through the muck, you come across what looks like a torn scrap of blue wool snagged on a bramble. It stirs something in your brain, familiar, but distant. You check your own cloak. Green. Huh. You follow the trail further and spot something that sends a shiver through your spine. A small wooden pendant hanging from a tree branch, carved with the image of a serpent biting its own tail. The orb, the ancient symbol of cycles, endings, beginnings. You have no idea why you know that, but you do. The path eventually leads you to an old stone marker at the edge of the marsh. Runestones are meant to be tall, noble, inscribed with the deeds of kings. This one's half sunk, overgrown with moss, and cracked in two, but your eyes catch a single carved word, faded but unmistakable. Thorment. You say it aloud, and your voice sounds strange to your own ears, too deep to certain. Then, from behind you, a low chuckle. You spin. A man in a patched cloak is leaning on a crooked staff, smile like a fox's, eyes like wet slate. He says, "Took you long enough, Thormund. Been waiting for your dumb face to show up." Your mouth opens, but no words come out. The man snorts. "Don't recognize me, huh? Figures you never did have a head for faces, or wars, or staying dead, apparently." He gestures for you to follow, and starts limping toward a faint glow in the trees. Against your better judgment, and, let's be real, your judgment's currently playing hide-and-seek with your memory. You follow. The man leads you to a campfire hidden beneath a thicket. The flames crackle over dry wood, and the heat licks your freezing hands. You finally speak. "Who are you?" He shrugs. "Call me Canute. You called me worse things back in the day." You hesitate. "Back in what day?" He gives you a look. "Oh boy, you really don't remember anything, do you?" You shake your head. "Well then," he says, rubbing his hands together, "story time it is." He tells you that you vanished during a skirmish near the coast, that you were a war leader of sorts, not a king, not quite a raider, but something in between, a bannerless warrior who only fought for one reason: to finish something you never explained. You disappeared right when your men needed you most. Some said you were taken by the gods, Canute says. Others said you fled. Cowardice, madness, divine punishment. Take your pick. Historians still argue whether your absence lost the war or ended it. You sit back, stunned. The name still doesn't feel like yours. The war, no memory. And yet your hands seem to know the weight of an axe, and your feet always seem to land just right when you crouch. Canute tosses you a crust of bread. You catch it without looking. "That's muscle memory," he says. "You can't fake that." Your eyes drift to your arm. Beneath the grime, your skin is pale and marked scratches maybe, or scars. One seems to form a circle with jagged wings branching out from it. You trace it with a thumb. "Familiar was I important?" you ask. Canute snorts. "To some, dangerous. To most, you had a way of making enemies sing your praises and then regret every word." The fire cracks again. Somewhere far off, an owl hoots once, sharply. You feel like that sound meant something once. A signal. Canute leans in. "Look, you may not remember the war, but it remembers you. Folks are whispering that Thormund the Unyielding walks again. That's going to cause problems." You don't respond. He tilts his head. "Or maybe you wanted to forget. Maybe it's safer that way. Either way, someone's going to find you. Probably soon." You stare into the fire. The flames twist into shapes: longboats, axes, helmets with snarling animal crests. You blink. "Just fire. Why now?" You whisper. "Why me?" Canute chuckles. "Once more, you always did ask the wrong questions." You lie down near the fire, cloak wrapped tight, unsure if you're resting or preparing for something else. But one thing's clear, that war might be over, but it hasn't forgotten you. You wake to the sound of crows, at least. You hope they're crows. Their cries are sharp and metallic, almost like metal scraping stone, and they circle overhead in a slow, spiraling dance. The marsh behind you is hidden by mist again, like it never existed. Canute is gone. No ashes, no footprints, just a half-eaten crust of bread left beside the fire. You're alone again. You test your legs. They're stiff but functional, like you've spent more time on horseback than in bed. The axe is still with you, looped through a crude leather ring on your belt. Its haft feels perfectly molded to your palm, another cruel joke from a memory that refuses to show up for its own party, with nowhere else to go. You follow the distant sound of crashing waves and the faint scent of salt and fish guts. It brings you to a weather-worn dirt track and eventually to a small coastal village perched on a bluff. Its longhouses clustered like gossiping old women. You step onto the main path and are instantly greeted by a shout. Thormund. A boy runs off toward the village square. Within minutes, half the town is pouring out like ants from a kicked nest. Some are barefoot, some wear armor. One woman still holding a chicken, but they all have one thing in common. Their eyes widen as they see you. Not with fear, not quite with awe and confusion, and a bit of that very specific look people get when they've already told everyone you were dead. A broad-shouldered man approaches, arms open. His beard is streaked with sea salt and age, but he walks like a bear who's had a few drinks. You're alive. He bellows, sweeping you into a back-breaking embrace before you can protest. Thormund, the unyielding, returns. He pulls back and gives you a good look, or someone wearing his face. You offer a weak smile. Do I know you? He pauses. It's me, Halvard's shield brother. We bled in the fjords together. You saved my arm. You glance down at the man's left arm. Sure enough, it's got an old scar at the shoulder, where something big must have tried to rip it off. He's holding a chunk of pickled herring in the other hand, and offers it to you like it's some kind of ceremonial relic. Don't remember any of that, you say softly. A murmur runs through the gathered crowd. Halvard's expression darkens. Not even the last stand at Wagner's, he asks. When you broke their ranks with just that axe and a spear through your side. You shake your head. A woman gasps. Then we have work to do, Halvard says, guiding you toward the longhouse. Tonight, we feast. The longhouse is thick with smoke and meat and the scent of pine tar. Jugs of ale are passed around like they're magical elixirs. You're seated at the head of the table, and people toast you like a returned demigod. You sip the ale. It's strong enough to disinfect a small wound. You go back for more. At one point, Halvard slaps the table and roars. Show him the tattoo. Two men haul you to your feet like overexcited cousins. One yanks down the collar of your tunic. A cheer goes up. On your upper chest there it is, a thick black tattoo in Norse runes, encircling what looks like a raven pierced by a spear. It burns faintly when they touch it. That mark's been feared from here to Lindisfarne, someone says. It's the mark of the Oathbound. You blink. The what now? A silence falls. Halvard lowers his voice. You swore an oath of vengeance for a brother lost. The village burned. You said it wouldn't end until justice was done. That tattoo bound you to it, even if your memory didn't. You stare down at the ink. It's as much a mystery to you as your own name, which still feels borrowed. You try to speak, but a sudden cough from the corner distracts you. A withered old man with milky eyes and fingers like dry roots waves a stick in your general direction. He rasps, I saw it. I saw this moment. In the fire, long ago. The wolf returns with no memory. The war sleeps in his bones. You pause. And what happens next? He grins. You wake it up. Comforting. A teenage girl sidles up beside you and pushes a bowl of honeyed goat cheese into your hands. You used to love this, she says. Before you left, not before the war, not before you disappeared. There's weight in the way she says it. You taste the cheese. It is delicious, also slightly sad, like someone made it while crying and listening to tragic harp music later. As the mead dulls the edges of your confusion, Halvard leans close. You know, historians still argue whether your little band of Oathbound were the start of the real Viking expansion. You didn't raid, you punished. There's a difference. You blink. That sounds morally gray. He laughs. You always said it wasn't about morality, it was about memory. You wanted the world to remember your name, even if you couldn't. There's a pause. You glance around the hall, at faces trying to find the old you behind the new one. Then down at your axe, leaning against the table, its head gleaming like it wants you to remember. Outside, the wind howls like a warning. You're not sure what's more dangerous, the war you forgot, or the one that hasn't finished forgetting you. By morning, the hangover is a full-body fog, the kind that makes the world feel padded and slightly off-kilter, like you're living inside a wool-lined bucket. The longhouse smells of stale meat and burned fish fat, and someone is snoring with the volume of a war drum. You step outside into the bright sting of coastal daylight, only to squint like a bat in a candle shop. The sun's too enthusiastic, the gulls too loud, and someone's hammering. It's Halvard, naturally shirtless, red-faced, and shouting at a group of villagers hauling sharpened logs to reinforce the palisade walls. The wood is raw, sticky, with sap, and splinters fly like insults. You approach slowly, unsure if you're expected to help or just be inspiring. There he is, Halvard grunts, jamming a stake into a trench. The hero returns and sleeps through morning chores. You raise an eyebrow. Did I ever do chores? He chuckles, not once. But you did invent the strategy of looking incredibly busy while avoiding all responsibility. Brilliant, really. You're about to respond when a tall woman with a smudge of charcoal on her forehead sidles up to you. She holds out a folded bundle of clothing. These were yours. We kept them. You take them. Leather and wool. Heavy with time and something else dust memory. There's a faint smell of iron, pine pitch, and old sweat. Inside one sleeve, a strip of cloth is stitched with the name Thormund, in careful, crooked runes. That name again. You pull off the borrowed tunic, and slide into the old armor. It fits. Of course it does. There's a pause in the camp. People stare, then a voice says, "He's back." You wish you believed it. Later, in the shade of a half-built watchtower, Halvard tells you something peculiar. You ever wonder why we called you unyielding? It wasn't just your stubborn streak. You smirk. Let me guess, I couldn't be killed. Not just that, he replies. You refused to die. Literally, there was a time in the north, during the Black Shore siege, 3 arrows in your chest, 1 in your thigh. You stayed standing. People thought you were a Draugr, an undead warrior. That's comforting. He grins. You weren't, obviously. That evening, a fire is lit in the village square, more subdued than the feast the night before. People bring gift tokens, really. A child offers you a seashell she claims you gave her when she was small. A baker hands you a carved horn cup, engraved with a serpent. An old woman gives you an awkward smile and a single sock. You left it, she says. Every gesture is the same, kind, tentative, searching. They all want to find pieces of you and the man standing here. Problem is, you're still not sure you're that man. You wander toward the shoreline to clear your head, your boots crunching over pebbles and kelp. The sea stretches out before you like a challenge. Waves hiss against the rocks. You stare at the horizon, trying to feel anything familiar instead. You spot it, something buried in the sand just above the high tide line. You kneel. It's a shield, splintered, faded, rim cracked. The design almost vanished, but you can still make it out. A serpent biting its tail. The buries again, that symbol keeps following you. You brush sand away and find something else tucked beneath it. A rusted broken chain. As you lift it, a chill runs through your fingers. There's a small pendant, dangling at the end. Round scratched, a face etched into the metal. 1-8. Odin. You glance over your shoulder. The beach is empty, but the sky seems darker now. A single raven flies overhead, its wings whispering like secrets you're not supposed to hear. You pocket the pendant. Back in the village, Halvard meets you with a jug of watered-down ale and a question he's clearly been chewing on all day. So, do you feel like him yet? You take the jug. Sip. Swallow. No, he nods slowly. Thought not. There's a silence between you, filled only by the quiet sounds of wood being chopped, children laughing, and someone swearing creatively while tripping over a goat Halvard-sized. You know, historians still argue whether you actually led us, or if we all just kind of followed you because you were too intense to ignore. Either way, you mattered. Do I still? He looks at you sideways. Depends on whether you pick up where you left off, or walk away. You finger the edge of your axe blade. It's sharp, of course it is. That night, sleep comes in fits. Your dreams are a patchwork of memory fragments. Torches in the dark. A woman with silver eyes. A man falling backward into the sea, laughing as he bleeds. And always, that same chant, echoing in the back of your mind. Thormund, unyielding when you wake. There's someone at your door. A young boy, face pale as birch bark. He whispers, a skald has arrived. She's singing your saga. That, shouldn't be possible because, as far as you know, your saga never had an ending. The skald stands in the center of the village square like a prophet at a crossroads. She's tall, with a cloak made of mismatched feathers and hair braided with bone and ribbon. A small crowd circles her, half suspicious, half hypnotized. Her voice is low, rhythmic, sharp as frostbite. She's reciting your saga, except you don't recognize most of it. You pause at the edge of the crowd, heart thudding harder than you'd like. Her words strike like arrows, clean and deliberate. Thormund, the unyielding, breaker of the oathless, lost to storm and slaughter and smoke-stained skies, fell at sea, yet walked again. Memory gone, purpose buried, the blood debt unpaid. You shiver. It's not just the cold, it's the way the villagers glance at you when she says those words, like they've all been holding their breath, waiting for something to finally explain you. She finishes with a flourish, strumming a battered lyre. Silence follows. Then a few cautious claps. You step forward. What do you mean? I fell at sea. The skald looks at you for the first time. Her eyes are mismatched, one blue, one gray. Exactly what it sounds like. She replies, they say your ship was pulled under off the coast of Jutland. No survivors, but here I am, you say. She shrugs. Dead men don't always stay that way. You try to laugh. It comes out strange. The villagers drift away, unsure what to do with two versions of you in the same square, one in flesh, one in song. The skald sits cross-legged near the fire pit and begins retuning her lyre. You lower your voice. Where did you hear that saga? I didn't, she says, plucking a single string. I wrote it. You blinked, so you just made it up. She smirks. That's what we do. Scouts weave truth and rumor into rope and see who hangs on. You stare at her, uneasy. But how did you know I lost my memory? She doesn't look up, because only someone with no past walks into a village that buried him and doesn't ask about his wife. You freeze. There's a cold silence between you now, one that wraps around your ribs like a vice. Where is she, you ask? The skull's expression softens. Gone years ago, after you vanished. She waited, but the village needed her to move on. And so she did. You clench your jaw. What was her name? Brinja. The name crashes over you like a rogue wave. It feels familiar, more than anything else, as the scourge rises and walks past you, but not before placing a hand briefly on your shoulder. She sang louder than I ever could. She whispers. Even the wind listened. You stay in the square long after she's gone, watching the fire smolder down to embers. The villagers avoid your gaze. It's not fear. It's something worse, pity wrapped in reverence. Later, you ask Halvard why no one ever told you he doesn't meet your eyes. Because we didn't think you could take it. You were different before. Rage and steel. No room for grief. You nod slowly. And now he shrugs. Maybe now you're human. You go to the shore again, to the same spot where you found the shield. This time the tide is lower. You kneel and dig through the wet sand. There's more buried here. You find a leather pouch half rotted inside, a scrap of faded parchment, illegible but sealed with a thumbprint in wax, a bone comb, a ring. Simple, silver, and too small for your hand now. You close your eyes. The ring burns cold in your palm. A memory sharp, sudden, brief, her hands calloused from farm work, a smile like sunrise, the feel of her hair tangled in your fingers, and a voice, far away, come back, promise me. You open your eyes. The moment's gone. Back at the village, Halvard is waiting with something new. Rough ones, sketched on birch bark and stitched leather. We tracked your old campaign, he says. What we could, raids, retributions. You were hunting someone, always circling back to the same coastlines. Like a wolf chasing something just out of reach, you scan the markings. One symbol appears again and again. A tower, simple, stark, 4 lines in a square. What's this? That, Halvard says, was the stronghold of Jarl Eirik the Redback. The name slams into your chest like a falling tree. Not because you remember it, but because your body reacts before your mind can catch up. Fists clenched, teeth grinding. Something buried just screamed. Halvard continues. Eurik's long dead fell in the North Sea, they say, but his sons, they took his place. Vicious, worse than their father, and they're still out there. You nod slowly. Then the oath isn't over. Halvard looks up, cautious. You're sure? You don't answer right away. Instead, you say, historians still argue whether a man is bound more by the promises he remembers or the ones he forgot. He smiles faintly. That sounds like something you would have said back when you scared everyone. You roll the maps up. Maybe I still do. The next morning you leave the village again, but this time you're not wandering. You have a destination, a name, a symbol, and the strange, slow feeling that somewhere out there, the story is still waiting for you to finish telling it. You travel north along the coast, the wind biting harder each day, as if testing your resolve. The sky here is more cloud than color, a rolling gray that mirrors the sea's mood. You pass abandoned fishing shacks, broken ships half buried in kelp, and once a goat standing proudly on a roof, as if auditioning for a saga of its own. The land remembers things even when you don't. Every crag, every echo of waves against stone feels like it's nudging you, whispering something just out of reach. You keep the silver ring in your pouch, next to the Odin pendant and the piece of parchment. Trophies of a self you can't fully recall. Midway through your journey, you reach the remains of a battlefield, though no one calls it that anymore. Just a clearing ringed by boulders, wildflowers poking through the moss. You stop. Your feet refuse to move forward. It hits you like lightning without thunder. This place knows you, and for one terrifying second, you know it back. You see yourself, here younger, snarling, covered in blood and something darker grief maybe. You were fighting 3 men at once. One had a horned helmet, another wore your colors, then turned his blade on you. The third, he laughed when he died. That sound still sticks in your ears. Then the memory fades, leaving behind the weird aftertaste of dacia vu and boiled onions. You sit for a while, breathe, touch the earth. The wind shifts, and a scent floats past, so faint you almost miss it. Lavender. Your wife used to crush lavender into the laundry, didn't she? You don't cry, but your chest feels too full to speak. That night you find shelter in a half-collapsed longhouse, sleeping next to a fire you built from splintered door frames. Your dreams are murkier now. No words, just flashes, waves crashing over a longship, a tower rising on a cliff, a scream that sounds like your own voice split in two. At dawn you find tracks near the ashes, human recent. You're being followed the next day. You reach the borderlands, uncharted stretches of frosted hills and broken forest. Here the crows outnumber people and the rivers have names no one writes down anymore. You stop at a clearing ringed with runestones. One of them catches your eye. It's not carved with prayers or curses, but something stranger. Do not return, Thormund. The debt is paid. You stare at it for a long time. The lettering is old, yours, maybe, carved by a version of you that believed in finality. But here you are, still walking, still unreturned, still unfinished. You trace the grooves with your fingers. They're weathered, but deep. Whoever carved this wanted it to last. That night, you meet someone, a woman, hooded, alone at a fire. She doesn't look up when you approach, just gestures to the other side of the flames. You sit. I know that name, she says after a while. Which one? She smiles without teeth, Thormund, unyielding. The man who wouldn't die. The man who couldn't stop fighting. You say nothing. You came through my village once, she continues. Years ago. You spared a traitor. Told him mercy is its own punishment. Then you left. Was he punished? Every day, since she pokes the fire with a stick. Historians still argue whether that act made you noble or weak. You sigh. I don't care what historians think. Good, she says, finally looking at you. Her eyes are pale blue, almost colorless. Then maybe you're ready. For what? But she doesn't answer. She just pulls something from her cloak, a folded piece of leather. A map. You recognize the shape, the jagged peninsula, the small circle drawn in red ink. The tower. You're not the only one heading there, she says, but you might be the only one who deserves to. Who? You take the map. Who are you? A messenger? A memory? Or maybe just someone who talks to strangers by firelight? Who knows? You glance up from the map hand. She's gone. No footsteps. No parting words. Just the smell of lavender again. Sharp and sudden and wrong. The next few days blur into one long trek. You cross a stone bridge older than your bones and sleep under a tree that crackles when the wind hits just right. Once, you pass a group of raiders huddled around a boar carcass. They look up, tense, but something about your presence makes them lower their weapons and look away. You still have that effect. Apparently. Eventually you see it, the tower. It's real, rising from the cliffside like a broken tooth. Black stone wrapped in creeping ivy, partially collapsed, but still standing, just like you. You wait until nightfall, then you climb. The stairs are slick with moss and time, but your feet remember what your head doesn't. You reach the top just as the moon slips from behind a cloud inside. It's empty except for a single chair. And on its helm. Your helm. You lift it. It's heavier than it looks. Inside, something is etched in tiny runes along the rim. You squint in the dark. Return when you remember why you left. You sit, not because you're tired, but because the world just shifted, and suddenly, so do you. Not fully, not yet, but enough. You sit in the tower for hours, maybe longer. The cold presses into your bones, but you barely notice. The helm rests in your lap, a strange anchor to a past you're not sure you want but can't stop chasing. Wind howls through the cracks. In the stone, a falcon screams in the distance, hunting something unseen. Beneath the tower, waves gnaw endlessly at the cliffs, just like they did when you left, however long ago that was. And there, in the silence, memory stirs, not as a clean cinematic flash, but as a storm of scattered images. A council of war around a fire, men arguing with raised voices, a child's drawing pressed into your handstick, figures in a tall house with red smoke curling from the chimney. You hear Bringe's voice, soft, fierce. Promise me you'll return. You hadn't, or maybe you couldn't. You walk through the rest of the tower, careful on the warped stone. There are signs of old habitation, burned out torches, a rusted spear. Bones you hope belonged to dinner, and not someone less willing. On one wall you find carvings, dozens, all the same shape. A circle split by a vertical line. It stirs something deep. It's not just a symbol, it's a message. You recognize it. You used to leave this mark after every campaign, not for glory but as a ledger, a reminder. Each time it appeared it meant blood had been spilled that could not be repaid. You touch the newest one. The groove is fresh. That means someone else is still carving them, which means someone is still fighting your war. You don't sleep that night. Instead, you descend the tower before dawn and follow the cliffs west. The coastline twists like an old scar, and for the first time, you feel like you're walking toward something, not away. By midday, you reach a ridge overlooking a wide valley. There's smoke below, not from destruction but campfires, dozens of them. An encampment, not a village, not a trading outpost, a warband. You crouch and watch. Figures move below, armored, organized, disciplined, shields painted with a stylized, wolf's head, a design that crawls like oil across your brain. Familiar, hated. You clench your fists. The Eirik sons. The sons of Jarl Eirik, the ones who continued the blood feud long after you vanished. You remember now. You were hunting them. Each raid, each fire, each battle, it was a thread in a longer revenge tapestry. They had taken something. No, not something. Someone. Your son. You whispered the word before you even realize it's forming on your tongue. Halrik. The sound stuns you. It doesn't feel foreign. It feels like a locked door swinging open. You had a son. The image bursts. Forth, mud-splattered boots, a wooden sword, wild hair, a laugh that chased birds from the thatch. You remember training him to throw a spear. You remember failing to shield him from what came next. The Eriksons had burned your home. Bringe survived. Halrik didn't. That was the war. That was the oath. And now, as the memory sits fully formed in your chest like a second heartbeat, you understand why your mind locked it away. not to forget but to survive. You descend the ridge, not in a blind charge. You're older, calmer, smarter. Thought you find a lone scout on patrol barely out of boyhood. He doesn't see you until it's far too late. You pin him against a tree, blade at his neck, but you don't kill him. You're going to carry a message. You growl. To who? He stammers. Your chieftains. Tell them Thormund, the unyielding, has returned, and he remembers. The boy bolts when you release him. You let him go. Fear spreads faster than steel. Back in the trees, you find a fallen branch and carve the symbol, the circle with the line. You leave it balanced on a boulder at the edge of the valley. They'll find it, they'll know. That night, you camp under a bent pine that creaks like an old warrior muttering in his sleep. You keep the fire small, your sword close. Your memories. Closera. Wolf howls far off. A real one this time. You almost smile. Historians still argue whether the Eriksons burned your village out of vengeance or as a warning to others, but you remember Brinja saying something else. After the ash settled, they were afraid. Afraid of what you'd become if you had nothing left to lose. Turns out she was right, but there's something else too. Now you have something again. A family, not a farm, but a reason. And that's more dangerous than any sword. You sit in the tower for hours, maybe longer. The cold presses into your bones, but you barely notice. The helm rests in your lap, a strange anchor to a past you're not sure you want but can't stop chasing. Wind howls through the cracks. In the stone, falcon screams in the distance, hunting something unseen. Beneath the tower, waves gnaw endlessly at the cliffs, just like they did when you left, however long ago that was. And there, in the silence, memory stirs. Not as a clean cinematic flash, but as a storm of scattered images, a council of war around a fire. Men arguing with raised voices, a child's drawing pressed into your handstick, figures, and a tall house with red smoke curling from the chimney. You hear Brinja's voice, soft, fierce. Promise me you'll return. You hadn't, or maybe you couldn't. You walk through the rest of the tower, careful on the warped stone. There are signs of old habitation, burned out torches, a rusted spear, bones you hope belong to dinner and not someone less willing. On one wall you find carvings, dozens, all the same shape, a circle split by a vertical line. It stirs something deep. It's not just a symbol, it's a message. You recognize it. You used to leave this mark after every campaign, not for glory but as a ledger, a reminder. Each time it appeared, it meant blood had been spilled that could not be repaid. You touch the newest one. The groove is fresh. That means someone else is still carving them, which means someone is still fighting your war. You don't sleep that night. Instead, you descend the tower before dawn and follow the cliffs west. The coastline twists like an old scar, and for the first time, you feel like you're walking toward something. Not away. By midday, you reach a ridge overlooking a wide valley. There's smoke below, not from destruction, but campfires, dozens of them. An encampment, not a village, not a trading outpost, a warband. You crouch and watch. Figures move below, armored, organized, disciplined. Shields painted with a stylized, wolf's head, a design that crawls like oil across your brain. Familiar. Hated. You clench your fists. The Eirik sons. The sons of Jarl Eirik, the ones who continued the blood feud long after you vanished. You remember now. You were hunting them. Each raid, each fire, each battle, it was a thread in a longer revenge tapestry. They had taken something. No, not something. Someone. Your son. You whisper the word before you even realize it's forming on your tongue. Haurik. The sound stuns you. It doesn't feel foreign. It feels like a locked door swinging open. You had a son. The image bursts. Fourth mud-splattered boots. A wooden sword. Wild hair. A laugh that chased birds from the thatch. You remember training him to throw a spear. You remember failing to shield him from what came next. The Eriksons had burned your home. Brinja survived. Haurik didn't. That was the war. That was the oath. And now, as the memory sits fully formed in your chest like a second heartbeat, you understand why your mind locked it away. Not to forget, but to survive. You descend the ridge. Not in a blind charge. You're older, calmer, smarter. You find a lone scout on patrol barely out of boyhood. He doesn't see you until it's far too late. You pin him against a tree, blade at his neck, but you don't kill him. You're going to carry a message. You growl. To who? He stammers. Your chieftains. Tell them Thormund, the unyielding, has returned, and he remembers. The boy bolts when you release him. You let him go. Fear spreads faster than steel. Back in the trees you find a fallen branch and carve the symbol, the circle with the line. You leave it balanced on a boulder at the edge of the valley. They'll find it. They'll know that night. You camp under a bent pine that creaks like an old warrior muttering in his sleep. You keep the fire small. Your sword close. Your memories. Closera. Wolf howls far off. A real one this time. You almost smile. Historians still argue whether the Eriksons burned your village out of vengeance, or as a warning to others. But you remember Brinja saying something else. After the ash settled, they were afraid. Afraid of what you'd become if you had nothing left to lose. Turns out she was right. But there's something else, too. Now you have something again. Not a family, not a farm, but a reason, and that's more dangerous than any sword. You'll leave before sunrise, no long goodbye, no stirring speech, just a quiet nod to the four who've stood by you even after the years, the silences, the ghosts. Sten clasps your forearm. You sure? You just say, "This part is mine." The Black Fjord lies north where cliffs meet water like jagged teeth. The journey takes 3 days. Each step is heavier than the last, not from fatigue, but from memory returning in pieces. Like rain slowly soaking into dry soil, you pass the field where Brinja once strung herbs to dry, the tree where Haurik carved his name into the bark and misspelled it twice, a burned-out farmhouse where your warband camped the night before your first raid. You remember the song you sang to calm your nerves, and how someone threw a boot at your head to make you stop. Historians still argue whether the Black Fjord fortification was built by Thanes or stolen from an older people. But the truth doesn't really matter now. All that matters is that it stands, just like the man who took everything from you. Eirik, the younger. You reach the cliffs at dusk. The tide is low. The walls of the hall rise from the water like some ancient beast, all shadow and jagged stone. Flags hang from spears on the ramparts, Wolf's head sigils, faded and rain-beaten. You don't sneak in. That isn't the point. You walk right up to the gate, slam the butt of your axe against it, and shout, "Tell him the ghost is here." The guards hesitate. You see one of them recognize you. He bolts inside like he's just seen a revenant. You wait. The gate creaks open with the sound of rust on rust. They let you in because Eirik wants to see you. You're escorted into the main hall. Torches burn in iron sconces. The stone walls are lined with shields, trophies, threats, both. And there, at the far end, sits Eirik, older, thicker around the waist, beard streaked with gray. His eyes sharpen the moment he sees you, and for a breath, neither of you speak. Then he says, "I thought you were dead." You reply, "Everyone keeps saying that. Maybe it's true, and you're all just a fever dream I haven't shaken." He chuckles, not kindly, not cruelly, just weary. You sit across from him, no weapons, not yet, just silence and firelight. You've been stirring things up. He says, "You killed my son." His expression doesn't change, but his fingers curl slightly, just once. "I didn't light the fire," he says. "I just didn't put it out." You lean forward. "You ordered it." "I was a boy." He was younger. The silence stretches. Finally, he pours 2 cups of mead. "You don't touch yours." "Why now?" he asks. "All these years." "I forgot." You say. He blinks. "You what?" "I forgot the war, the pain, the names. I forgot myself, but I remember now." He exhales, long and low. "I wondered why. It stopped while you vanished. We waited. Every winter we watched the trees, expecting you to come screaming through them." You nod. "I almost did. Then something broke. I wandered. I built a new life. Until I remembered what you took from the old one." Eirik sips his mead. "Do you want a duel?" he asks. "Right here. Settle it like the sagas say." "No," you say. "Tss. I came to tell you, it ends tonight. Not with swords. With you sending your men home, tearing those banners down. Leaving the past in the sea where it belongs." Eirik stares into the fire. "Historians still argue whether this war was ever about land or blood," he mutters. "But I remember the night it began. My father said your brother called him a coward. That was it. A single word, and it cost us generations." He looks up at you. "Do you believe in peace now?" "I believe in rest, and if I refuse," you shrugged, "then I kill you and burn this place, and start the war all over again." Another silence. Then Eirik stands. "Come with me." He leads you to a chamber beneath the hall. It's cold, humid, smells of earth and salt. He opens a chest inside. Maps, letters, charters, everything the Eriksons had planned, raids, alliances, bribes, the entire scaffolding of their power. He takes a torch and drops it in. The papers go up like dry leaves. "That war is over," he says. You believe him, but you say nothing. "Back above," he asks, "will you stay here, help lead what's left?" You shake your head. "I'm tired of war, even forgotten ones." And with that, you walk away down the cliff path, past the burning chest, past the guards who watch you like they don't know whether to salute or flee. You reach the sea. The tide is rising. Foam curls around your boots. You sit and, for the first time in what might be a lifetime, you do nothing. You don't go back to the woods. You don't go anywhere, not at first. You just drift along the coast, taking odd shelter in fishermen's huts and half-sunk boathouses. Some offer food, others cross themselves and shut their doors. You've become something between a ghost story and a folk hero, depending on who's telling it. In one village, a child touches your beard and whispers, "Are you the man who burned the Wolf King's letters?" You nod. She gives you a seashell. You keep it. For weeks, you walk with no destination. Your boots wear thin. Your axe rusts. Your memories fade again, but not in that smothering way from before. More like steam lifting off warm water. You remember your son without needing revenge. Your wife without guilt. You even remember that stupid drinking song with the part about goats and moonlight. Eventually, your feet carry you inland. You find yourself standing on a ridge overlooking a quiet valley. one that stirs something strange and familiar in your chest. And they're half covered in vines. Its thatched roof caved in, but unmistakably yours. You see it, your old home you didn't expect it to still be standing, but it is. The door groans as you push it open. Inside, the air is thick with dust and the smell of dried herbs. The hearth is cracked, but the stones are the same. There are scratches on the doorframe where your son used to measure his height. With a dagger's tip, you run your hand over them. He never made it past the third mark. You sit on the floor, and you cry, not loudly, not with fury, just a slow, aching release, like thawing snow finally trickling down the mountain. Historians still argue whether men like you could ever truly retire from war, but no one ever seems to ask whether you want to. The next morning you begin to clean. It's not a decision, just instinct. You clear the broken furniture, you sweep the ash, you mend what can be mended and burn what can't. Day by day the house returns to life, not as it was, but as something new, something quieter. Occasionally travelers pass by. They ask for water, shelter, directions. You offer what you can. Some recognize you, most don't. You like it that way. You even find a puppy half-wolf, probably abandoned by hunters, hiding under your collapsed shed. It growls at first, but eventually curls up by your feet. You name him Hush. The irony is not lost on you. One day, while gathering wood near the creek, you stumble on a leather pouch buried beneath the stones. Inside is a coin etched with the old king's seal, a tooth you don't recognize, and a folded to scrap of parchment on it. A single line. We remember the silence. No signature, but you know who sent it. The others are still out there. Jora, Bessie, Eagle. Maybe they're building something to do. You think about finding them, but not yet. One morning, a boy rides up on a panting horse. He's barely 10 close. 2 big eyes, too wide. There's a fight, he says breathlessly. North Village bandits. They said to find the war ghost. You pause, holding a pail of water. I'm not a ghost. You say gently. He frowns. But you're him, right, Thormund? You don't answer. You just set down the pail. You grab your old cloak. It still smells like salt and smoke. You don't take your axe, but you do take your walking stick, the one you carved yourself with the swirl pattern at the grip and the groove near the bottom that always catches your thumb. The boy watches as you whistle for Hush and start walking north. He trots after you. Are you going to kill them? You shake your head. Not if I can help it. But you could. You glance down at him, smiling. That's what scares them. When you reach the village, it's already over. Turns out the bandits weren't fighters, just hungry men with blunt knives. The villagers chased them off with pitchforks and insults. But seeing you arrive, the people cheer anyway. You stay for supper. They offer a bed. You decline. You're not ready to belong again, but you're no longer running that night. Lying under stars you recognize again. You wonder what your saga would sound like if someone told it by firelight. Would they skip the lost years, the wandering, the mercy? You hope not. Because those parts, that slow, painful remembering, that's where the healing was. Not in the battle. Not even in the revenge, but in coming home to a place that shouldn't have survived, and choosing to live in it anyway. You stay longer than you thought you would. Seasons pass. Quietly, the house becomes a home again. Birds nest under the eaves. The herb garden somehow sprouts wild thyme and bitter fennel. You don't remember planting them. Maybe your wife did, years ago. Maybe the earth just remembers better than people do. Every morning you wake to the soft snore of Hush by the hearth, and the smell of dew on the window ledge. And you stretch, crack your back like a ship's hull, and make tea from whatever grew that week. You start talking to the plants. You give your axe a name, Olga, and promise her she won't be needed anymore, unless for chopping wood or scaring away nosy raccoons. You also start writing things down. At first, it's just scattered thoughts. What the clouds looked like, what berries made your stomach hurt, the odd dream of the sea where your fingers turned to driftwood. Then stories, pieces of the war, the names you thought you'd forgotten, the jokes your son used to make, the smell of pine pitch on your old captain's beard. One of the quirks of Viking life, historians say, was that most of their legends were spoken, not written. But here you are, scratching truths into bark, onto scraps of hide and parchment, as if afraid your memory might slip again, and this time never come back. You send one letter to Jora. You write, you once said we'd never stop fighting until someone gave us a better story to live inside. I'm trying, come if you want. You don't send another. Weeks pass. Then months. One day, in the middle of winter, Jora walks through your door like she never left. No knock, no warning. Just snow in her hair and 2 fat trout slung over one shoulder. You still talk too much, she says. And then she's home, too. She fixes the roof better than you ever could. Refuses to sleep indoors unless it's snowing sideways. And brings stories, real ones, of the others. Bessie married a smith's widow. Sten lost 3 toes to frost and now only travels by cart. Egil went south and became a monk. A monk. You laugh until your ribs hurt. She says she's not staying, but every time she tries to leave, the dog growls and the weather turns. Eventually, she stops saying she'll go. Together, you build a bench facing the sun. She whittles wooden spoons and threatens to hit you with them when you burn the porridge. You argue about whether the world is worse than it used to be. You remind her that even warlords once drank from the same stream as beggars. She reminds you that streams dry up. One night, the wind howls and neither of you sleep. You tell her about the moment your memory came back. The fire, the scream, the unbearable certainty that something precious had been lost while you weren't looking. She nods. I had one too, woke up screaming your name and didn't know why. She doesn't cry, neither do you. You just sit by the hearth, two shadows on the wall, flickering like they're still deciding whether to stay or drift. Historians still debate whether returning warriors in your time could find peace. Most agree, probably not. Too many ghosts, too many scars. But some fringe thinkers argue that peace wasn't a destination, it was a skill. One you could learn, like carving or mending nets. A daily practice, a humble art. You like that. You think maybe you're learning it now. One spring, a stranger appears, a young skald with a harp strapped to his back and eyes full of wonder. Him, he whispers. The silent storm. The man who vanished mid-war. You sigh. I was never silent. Just lost. He stays for 3 days, listening, recording, asking. You let him. You even play along when he begs for the story of the burning chest, the blood oath, the fish thief duel which may or may not have happened. As he's leaving, he asks, "What do you want people to remember?" You answer without thinking, "That I came back." He nods. That's enough for a song. You don't care if he writes it, but Jora does. She makes him promise to say your beard was thicker and your dog bigger when he's gone. You laugh. She doesn't. You need a legacy, she says. No, you reply. I needed a nap. Still, you keep the seashell the little girl gave you. You hang it by the door, just in case someone else remembers. You plant an apple tree, It doesn't sound like much, but for you, it's everything. You dig the hole with your bare hands, toss in a pinch of ash from the hearth, and pat the soil like it's an old friend. Jora watches, arms crossed. You know it won't fruit for years. You smile. I know, planting something you might never see bloometh that isn't peace. What his days grow longer. The snows retreat up the mountain. The creek sings louder. You start baking badly. Try to make bread like your mother's, but it turns out more like flint. Jora breaks a knife trying to cut it and swears she's going to bury it under the apple tree as a warning to other loaves. You're happy that it's not the loud, victorious kind of happy. It's the quiet, humming kind, like a blade resting in its sheath. Then, of course, it ends. A rider comes just after the thaw. Not a child this time, an older man, cloaked in green, with a scar like a lightning bolt across his throat. He doesn't speak, just hands you a scroll sealed in wax, shaped like a raven. You know that mark. It belongs to the new war chief in the east. He's young, ambitious, hungry. He's reuniting clans under one banner, and anyone who doesn't bend gets burned. You crack the seal to the one once called Thormund. I offer amnesty. Come serve me as tactician, and I will restore your name and holdings profuse, and I cannot promise your valley will remain untouched. Jora leans over your shoulder. Well, that's friendly. You look out the window at the apple sapling. It trembles in the breeze like it's nervous. You don't respond to the letter, but you do pack a bag. Not with weapons, just maps, flint, dried meat, and that old brittle shell the girl gave you. You leave your axe hanging above the door, promise to return. Jora insists on coming. Someone has to keep you from getting poetic about trees again. You travel fast. The villages you pass wear fear like a second skin. Black banners hang from posts, doors stay shut, people speak in whispers. One farmer recognizes you, bows so quickly he drops his sack of onions. Historians still debate whether the Eastern chief truly had imperial ambitions, or if his campaigns were more about ego than politics. But whatever the reason, his reach is spreading fast and people are scared. You reach the borderlands in 5 days. There, in a makeshift camp near the ruins of an old Roman tower, you meet him. Leaf Greymark. He's not what you expect. No grand armor, no dramatic scars, just a young man with sharp eyes and 2 clean hands. He greets you like an old friend, offers wine, gestures to a map showing plans that stretch across half the known world. I read about you, he says, the Viking who vanished, the man who ended the old war without lifting a blade. You say nothing. I want your mind. He continues, help me win smarter, cleaner. And if I say no, you ask. He shrugs. You already know what happens. You study him. He's brilliant, no doubt. But he's never been punched in the mouth by someone who's already lost everything. That matters. Jora shifts beside you. You know she's already spotted 6 escape routes and a weak point in the tent wall. Leaf leans forward. You want peace, right? Then help me make it. You nod slowly. And if peace turns out to be just more war with better manners, he smiles, then you'll help me end that too. That night, you walk the edge of the camp. Think, count the stars. You don't sleep just before dawn. You write a note. You leave it on Leaf's map table, weighed down by a smooth black stone from your creek. I've made peace before. It starts by leaving men like you behind. By the time the sun rises, you and Jora are gone. You don't look back. You head west. Not because it's safer, it isn't, but because the rivers flow that way, and you're too tired to fight the current anymore. You and Jora travel light, quieter than most shadows, moving through fields and ruins like ghosts. With good intentions, the valleys here are broader, the birds louder, the food, okay, it's mostly berries and flatbread that tastes like sadness. But still there's peace in motion. On your fourth day out, you pass a burned-out village. The air still carries that bitter, choking sweetness of scorched wood and old meat. You don't linger. You've smelled it before, too many times, and this place isn't yours to mourn. But Jora stops. She kneels in the ash, brushes aside some blackened stone, and pulls out a tiny wooden horse chart, but intact. Same as my brother's, she says. Before he left for the fjords, before they found his boat half full of blood. You let her be. Everyone carries something they don't speak aloud. You continue west. Eventually, you stumble upon something you haven't seen in years. I think the gathering of clans under a sacred truce. Dozens of tents, families from 5 directions, old warriors and young fools in a single muddy field. And at the center, a fire tall enough to light the stars. You almost walk past it, but then someone shouts, "Your name. Bersi. His beard is thinner now, his belly rounder, but his voice still booms like a horn in a canyon. He hugs you so hard your spine cracks. And then he does the same to Jora, who scolds him for smelling like goat cheese and pride. Turns out, this gathering isn't just a market or moot, it's something else, something ancient, a rekindling. Every generation or two, some of the clans try to agree on one thing, how to be less stupid than the last. They sing old songs, share old grievances. Sometimes they even succeed in not killing each other, that's one. It's halfway decent that they invite you to speak. You say no. So of course, they make you stand on a stone near the fire, heart thudding like it's trying to escape. And you speak not about war, or glory, or vengeance. You talk about forgetting and remembering. You talk about waking up in a burning hut and not knowing your own name. About planting trees. About refusing the next fight, even when your blood sings for it. Historians still argue whether speeches like yours changed anything. Most agree, probably not. Words don't stop swords. But that night, nobody bled. And in your time, that counts. After the rekindling, you and Jora wander a little more, visit the coast, fish for dinner, sleep in caves and abbeys, and once, hilariously, in a hayloft with a very grumpy goose. Eventually you circle back. Not to the war, not to the camp, to the valley. Your valley, the house still stands. The apple tree is taller now, maybe 2 feet, maybe less, but it's there, and it's reaching. Like you dig your hands into the soil again, plant another one. Jora watches you with that old half smile. You know, she says, people are going to wonder where you went. You nod. Let them. The world will keep spinning. Kings will rise and fall. Battles will be fought over pride, land, and bad translations, but here, the water runs clean. The stars look back without judgment, and the trees don't ask what you've done, only what you'll do next. That night, you carve something into the doorframe next to the old marks, where your son measured his height. It's just one line. I remembered, and that's enough. One autumn evening, while the wind pulls gold from the trees, a small figure appears on your path. A boy, maybe 10, maybe 12, bare feet, eyes sharp, hair like a bird's nest. He carries a bundle of scrolls, 2 apples, and a look that says, he's been walking for days. You, him, he asks. You nod more out of curiosity than pride. Good, I'm supposed to learn from you. You blink. Who sent you? He shrugs. Someone who said you used to be scary, but now you make soup and write boring stuff that's secretly important. You glance at Jora, who's lurking by the well with the world's most suspicious smirk. The boy, he says his name is to sleep inside. He builds his own shelter out of sticks and moss. He sharpens sticks. He makes traps for imaginary enemies and names each one. He's exhausting, but you don't send him away. Instead, you give him chores. Teach him how to tell. Edible mushrooms from the kind that make your ears ring and your soul leave your body for a chat with ghosts' grandmas. You show him how to mend boots, track deer, and more importantly, how to listen when the forest goes quiet. He asks too many questions. Did you really kill 5 men in a single duel? Did you eat a bear? Why'd you forget who you were? You answer some, avoid others. One night he points to the apple tree. You plant that when you stopped fighting. You nod. He's quiet for a while. Then, so when I'm done fighting, I should plant one too. You laugh. Maybe, plant it first. Historians still argue over how warrior cultures transformed, whether the change came from religion, exhaustion, or economics. But others say it came from moments like this, from people quietly stepping aside, refusing to pass down their rage. One evening, you find Ari copying one of your old letters, painstakingly mimicking your half-dead handwriting. I want to remember, he says. You ruffle his hair. You will. Just don't let it trap you. You start telling him more, not just the battles or betrayals, but the way your heart felt when your daughter first laughed. The smell of the fjord the morning you left home. The terror of knowing your sword could end someone who loved their mother just as much as you did. Ari listens, he fidgets, rolls his eyes, but he listens. And sometimes, you catch him looking at the hills the way you do. Not like a boy waiting for war, but like someone waiting for a reason not to go. One day he's gone, no note, no goodbye. Just his walking stick leaning against the doorframe and one of your apples missing. You smile. That night, Jora says he'll be fine, and you believe her, because that's what you were doing all along, wasn't it? Preparing someone else to carry something lighter, to plant something new. You return to your writing, add new pages, draw maps of places that don't exist anymore or never did. You label them all with questions instead of names. You and Jora grow older, slower, her hair silvers, your hands stiffen, but neither of you regrets staying. You never become a legend. Your name never echoes in halls of kings. But every now and then a stranger arrives, sits on your bench, asks about the apple tree, and you tell them. Not all of it, just enough. The winters return, of course. They always do. This one arrives hard and fast, like a door slammed shut. Snow pours over the valley, piling in strange drifts, quieting the world. Even the birds seem to forget their songs for a while. You stack firewood by the door, patch the roof with more hope than skill, and brew soups thick enough to hold a spoon straight up. Your joints creak like old oars in frozen water. Jora makes fun of your grunts every time you stand. You're sounding more like a bear than a warrior. You grin. Then maybe I hibernate this year, but bears don't write. And so you do at night, wrapped in furs and silence. You scratch words onto pages by candlelight. The wind moans outside, but the ink flows inside slow, deliberate, patient. This is not a saga of swords or kings. It's not even your story anymore. It's about forgetting and forgiving and choosing small, soft things in a world that often prefers sharp, loud ones. You write about the girl who gave you the shell. You write about the time you tried to teach a fox to sit. You write about how silence, when shared, can feel louder than battle cries. Historians still debate whether such personal scrolls were ever meant to be found hidden in jars, tucked into ruins, or passed down through whispered bedtime stories. Yours, you hide them in plain sight, in a box beneath the bench where visitors like to rest. You start naming your days as if they were old friends. There's bread that didn't fail. Day stared at clouds too long. Day and the dreaded stepped on a thorn again. Day. Jora starts drawing, too. She illustrates your scrolls with sloppy sketches, warriors with spoons instead of swords, dragons who hoard knitting yarn instead of gold. Her favorite is a version of you holding a flower like it's about to explode. You laugh harder than you have in years, but then, one morning she doesn't wake. She's lying by the hearth, one hand resting on the shell. You sit beside her for hours, tracing the lines on her palm like they're roads to somewhere else. When you finally bury her beneath the hill with the lone pea, you do it slowly, carefully, with the kind of reverence usually reserved for gods or old songs. You don't cry, not yet. Instead, you speak aloud the names of every ridiculous, beautiful thing she did, chasing bees with a ladle, singing off-key on purpose, arguing with thunderstorms. You place a copy of your favorite scroll beside her, the one she hated because it made her laugh and sniffle at the same time. And then you go home. You sit in the chair by the door and you wait, not for death, for spring. And when it comes, it's louder than usual. The creek breaks through ice like a prisoner returning home. The apple tree, blossoming, tiny white petals like fragile stars. One of the scrolls blows open on your bench. It lands on the page where Ari once scribbled in the margin. What happens if nobody remembers? You smile because someone always does, even if it's just one boy. If it's just the tree.